For the last few weeks, even the last few months, we've been anticipating major filibuster reform. I feel like we've been promised major filibuster reform by Harry Reid and a couple of other Democratic senators, and the reform is here, and you will not be surprised to find out that it's not much of anything. Or it's a lot, depending on which aide you talk to. But we're going to give you the details, and we'll decide. You guys will decide. It'll be very entertaining. So the deal is out. Harry Reid, Mitch McConnell came up with this deal, and we have a few details. So basically, you still need 60 votes to make progress on most bills. What we do have progress on is the amount of debate that goes on after cloture votes is being cut, in some cases, from 30 hours down to 2 hours. Similarly, for district court nominations, the amount of time for debate after the votes will be cut down as well. And the point there is that we'll be able to get more done in the Senate each day. But since you still need the 60 votes to make progress, you'll just be able to, I guess, fail more often in the Senate. You'll have quicker turnaround on the failure.
It is not going to be much of a change at all, it seems to me. It seems like they basically just gave themselves the opportunity to pretend like they're going to do something about it without actually doing anything about it, which is kind of what we've had all along for the last 6 years. So.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think this is going to make any major change?
Not really, no. I mean, you really have to think about where people spend the most time trying to delay any legislation or anything of that sort, right? So the 30 hours to 2 hours, negligible. I mean, really, you can spend a lot of time in many other places in the process.
Yep. So two of the things that could have been done, a couple of proposals that had been talked about by, for instance, Democratic Senator Merkley and a couple of others. One of them is, I think, the most obvious change that could have been made, and that is that when somebody wants to filibuster a bill, they should actually be required to filibuster the bill, and not simply say, I filibuster and I'm going to go get some pizza. For instance, they should have to speak. I mean, we've been raised on classic political black and white movies where they had to speak in front of people.
Who hasn't seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was at a bloggers meeting in 2006 with Dick Durbin, senator from Illinois, and we asked him about that. You know, we said, so what's the deal? Why don't you guys stand up for this anymore? It seems like you just, you threaten the filibuster, and everybody goes, oh heavens, we're going to fight now, and then they all stop. And he actually said, well, you know, some of the senators are really, really old, and he was specifically referring to Robert Byrd, who was the longest serving member of the Senate. He was like in his 80s, I think, and he was, you know, he died a couple of years after that, and he said, well, they just can't stand up. And pretty much to a one, everybody said, then they shouldn't be in the Senate.
Yeah, or they can sit and speak, for instance. I would be willing to compromise on that, I think, but they should have to speak.
Right.
And so at one point I was a TA for political science courses, and many of the students, as you probably won't be surprised to find out, had no idea what the filibuster was. But I would explain it to them. We might show them some of the scenes from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and they'll be like, well, that's amazing. That's what they have to do. And then I have to follow on and say, no, that's not what they have to do. And the reason that it's that it was one of the reforms that was discussed previously and that should have been part of this package that Reid and McConnell agreed on is if you are not forced to publicly speak and defend the filibuster that you initiated, there's really no political price to launching it in the first place. Yeah. And because there's no price, we shouldn't be surprised, and we've seen the stats previously on the Young Turks, that the number of filibusters being launched each year has just skyrocketed over the last 15 years. With these reforms, I don't see that changing. They should have to go before the other senators. It should be on C-SPAN, if nothing else. And if they want to maintain it for a day, 2 days, 3 days, if they're so opposed to the legislation, then let's have Aaron Burnett and Lawrence O'Donnell speaking about the continuing filibuster. But now it's not even news. And the way that they typically portray what's going on is Democrats weren't able to get the 60 votes necessary to vote on this. They don't even mention the filibuster anymore.
They don't even try, you know, and they used to have it where, you know, the Dems could make it sound like they cared about something. They could say, well, we really believe in this. We truly believe in this. We just can't manage to get it done. And I think now, when you look at the very powerful minority of Democratic senators that prevented this from going through, you can see that they actually don't want to reform that filibuster. They had the opportunity. They had the opportunity back in 2010. I don't know if you remember this, but Harry Reid on the Senate floor actually said that he made a mistake. And I can quote for this, that he says, these two fine young senators said it was time to change the rules of the Senate, and we didn't. And they were right. The rest of us were wrong. Most of us, anyway. What a shame. Well, you know what? What a shame. Because turns out, I guess he was lying.
And I should say that I don't try to just judge politics based on this year or the goals that I have politically for this administration. We do have to understand that if the filibuster is reformed, it will also be reformed in that new version the next time there's a Republican president, next time there's a Republican majority in the Senate. So what do you think about that? Do you think that if it were to be changed, do you think that maybe one of the reasons we didn't see more substantive changes, fears from the Democrats who have seen power go back and forth a couple of times, they might be scared that the Republicans will abuse it next time around?
I would have thought at one point that maybe that was part of it. Oh, they don't want to give up the opportunity to be able to use that again if it comes around. But there are so many problems now in the country that we need to deal with that are intractable problems without having an operational Congress, that it seems to me actually a dereliction of duty for them not to have reformed the filibuster, because clearly we are stuck as a nation and we can't get anything done